Assalamualaikum to our respected panel, Prophet Teshema and Semio. My name is NURUL binti ROZALI, together with my partner, NURDIYANA binti ROSDI. So today, our group will present about our research, the topic on the influence of social media reviews and rating on young adult of Ayam Gepuk restaurant selection behavior in Puncak Alam. So let's start this study with our research background. Social media has become one of the main sources of information for consumers. Choose a restaurant. Young adults often use platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and Google reviews to check reviews and ratings before making dining decision. Since Puncak Alam has a large population of young adults and university students, this study focuses on how social media influence their restaurant selection behavior. After understanding the background of this study, I will now explain the research problem that led to this research. There are three research problems in this study. First, fake reviews and biased rating may reduce the credibility of online information. Second, young adults depend heavily on social media, but the large amount of online content makes it difficult to identify trustworthy information. Third, repeated studies have examined the combined influence of social media reviews, social media rating, and consumer advocacy on restaurant selection behavior, especially in Puncak Alam. Therefore, this study was conducted to address this gap. Based on this research problem, the study established three research objectives which I will explain in the next slide. This study has three research objectives. First, to determine the relationship between social media reviews and restaurant selection behavior among young adults. Second, to identify the social media rating and restaurant selection behavior among young adults. Third, to examine the relationship between consumer advocacy and restaurant selection behavior among young adults. Based on the object. To achieve this objective, three research questions were developed which I will explain in the next slide. Based on the objective, three research questions were developed. This question focus on whether social media reviews, social media ratings, and consumer advocacy have a relationship with restaurant selection behavior among young adults. To illustrate the relationship between these variables, I will now present the research framework. This framework consists of three independent variables, namely social media reviews, social media rating, and consumer advocacy. The dependent variable is restaurant selection behavior. The framework shows that all three independent variables are expected to influence restaurant selection behavior. Based on this framework, three hypotheses were developed which I will explain in the next slide. Based on the research framework, three hypotheses were developed to examine the relationship between the independent variables and the dependent variable. These hypotheses will be tested through correlation analysis. To support this hypothesis, I will now discuss the findings from previous studies in the literature review. This literature review focuses on three factors. First, social media reviews help people decide which restaurant to choose because positive reviews increase trust. Second, social media ratings show the quality of a restaurant and higher ratings make people more confident to visit. Third, consumer advocacy means recommendation from other people, which are often trusted more than advertisement. However, most previous studies focus on general consumers and did not specifically study young adults. Therefore, this study focuses on young adult restaurant selection behavior. After reviewing the previous studies, I will now explain the methodology used to conduct this research. Next, I would like to explain the methodology used in the study. First, this study adopted a quantitative and cross-sectional research design because the data were collected through questionnaire at one point in time. Next, the target population consisted of young adults aged 18 to 24 years old in Puncak Alam, as they are active social media users and represent the target group of the study. Purposive sampling was used because only respondents who meet the study criteria were selected. The required sample size was 119 respondents. And for the data collection, a structured questionnaire was created using Google Forms and distributed online to eligible respondents. After collecting the data, the statistical analysis used to answer each research objective will be explained in the next slide. For the data analysis, this table shows the statistical analysis used for each research objective. Since RO1, RO2, and RO3 aim to examine the relationship between the independent variables and restaurant selection behavior, supplement row correlation was used for all three research objectives. This analysis was selected because the data were not normally distributed, making supplement row the most appropriate statistical test. Next, I will pass to the next presenter.
Okay, now I will continue explain about the demographic profile. Based on the results, the majority of respondents were between 21 and 23 years old, representing 59.7% of the total respondents. In terms of gender, most respondents were female, accounting for 77.4%. Regarding occupation, the majority were students, representing 87.9% of the respondents. The majority of respondents mainly use Instagram and TikTok to search for restaurant information, showing that these are the most influential social media platform among young adults. Most respondents also had a monthly income between 500 and 1,000, which is reasonable since the majority were students. In addition, more than half of the respondents dine out 1 to 2 times per week. This indicates that they frequently visit restaurants and are familiar with making restaurant selection decisions. Overall, these findings are consistent with the target population of the study. After discussing the demographic profile of the respondents, I will move on to the reliability analysis to determine whether the questionnaire items used in the study are reliable and consistent. The reliability test was conducted to examine the consistency of the questionnaire items using convex alpha. Based on the table, all four dimensions achieved acceptable to good reliability with a value ranging from 0.747 to 0.828. Therefore, the questionnaire instrument used in this study was considered reliable and suitable for further analysis. Based on the normality test results, the data were found to be not normally distributed. Therefore, the Spearman row correlation was used to examine the relationship between independent variables and restaurant selection behavior. Next, I will present the descriptive analysis, which includes the mean score for each variable to identify the respondents' level of agreement towards social media use, social media rating, consumer advocacy, and restaurant selection behavior. For social media use, the mean score is 4.32, indicating that respondents generally agreed that online reviews help them evaluate the quality of Ayungkut restaurants. Meanwhile, social media ratings recorded the highest mean score of 4.5. This shows that respondents strongly agreed that social media ratings help them find information about products or services, and ratings are considered an important factor when evaluating restaurants. For consumer advocacy, the mean score obtained is 4.25, which indicates that respondents are willing to influence others by sharing positive opinions about Ayungkut restaurants. Lastly, restaurant selection behavior record a mean score of 4.27, showing that respondents are likely to revisit Ayungkut restaurants with positive online reviews as part of their restaurant selection decision. Overall, all constructs recorded high mean score with social media ratings showing the highest level of agreement among respondents. After that, I will explain the correlation analysis findings. Firstly, social media reviews show a strong positive relationship with restaurant selection behavior with NR value of 0.746. Secondly, social media ratings recorded the highest correlation with NR value of 0.851, making it the strongest factor in this study. Lastly, consumer advocacy also showed a strong positive relationship with NR value of 0.720. Overall, all these three variables have significant positive relationship because their p-values are below 0.005. Next, the findings show a positive relationship between social media reviews, social media ratings, and consumer advocacy with restaurant selection behavior among adults. In addition, all three hypotheses were supported. This means that these factors have a positive influence on how young adults choose a restaurant. Now we move to the discussion of this research. Firstly, social media reviews showed a strong relationship with a correlation value of 0.746. This indicates that reviews, comments, pictures, and shared experience on social media help adults evaluate restaurants before making decisions. This finding is supported by Ali et al. 2021, who found that online reviews influence consumer restaurant decision-making by providing information about restaurant quality and previous experiences. Secondly, social media ratings show the strongest relationship with restaurant selection behavior with a correlation value of 0.851. This is because ratings provide an initial impression of food quality, service, and customer experiences. This finding is supported by Zia and Ka 2023, who stated that online ratings influence consumer trust and willingness to choose a restaurant. Lastly, consumer advocacy also showed a strong relationship with a correlation value of 0.720. This finding is supported by Higgins 2025, who highlighted the word of mouth recommendation from previous customers can increase consumer confidence. Based on the SOR theory, all three factors act as stimuli that build customer trust and confidence, um, which eventually influence restaurant selection behavior. Then I will present the theoretical and managerial implication of this study. For the theoretical implication, this study supports the SOR theory, where social media reviews, rating, and consumer advocacy act as stimuli that influence consumer perception and lead to restaurant selection behavior. Social media ratings show the strongest relationship, indicating that consumer prefer information that is easy and quick to evaluate. For the managerial implication, Ayangapur restaurant owners should prioritize improving their social media ratings, actively manage customer reviews, encourage satisfied customers to recommend the restaurant, and provide regular employee training to maintain service quality and strengthen the restaurant reputation. For the limitation and recommendation, this study may be affected by response bias, as respondents may not answer carefully or may not accurately remember their actual dining experiences. In addition, the authenticity of social media information could not be fully controlled because reviews, ratings, or recommendations may be biased, misleading, or sponsored. Therefore, future research should use a mixed method approach, combining questionnaires with interviews or focus group discussions. Future studies should also examine the credibility and reliability of social media information to better understand its influence on consumer trust and restaurant selection decisions. Finally, I will conclude the overall findings of the study. Overall, the study successfully achieved all of its research objectives. The findings show that social media reviews, social media ratings, and consumer advocacy have significant positive relationship with restaurant selection behavior among young adults. Therefore, social media plays an important role in influencing consumer decision when choosing a local restaurant. We hope that the study can help restaurant owners develop more effective digital marketing strategies and provide useful insight for future researchers. So that's all from us. Thank you.